Welcome back to Stoic Mentalism, where we explore vital topics using Stoic wisdom. Like this video if you are intrigued by Stoic wisdom, and if you are new here, hit subscribe and enable notification for our latest update. Let's be honest, most people won't directly tell you they don't like you. Instead, they hide behind fake smiles, hollow compliments, and forced politeness. I've been there myself, believing someone was a friend, only to discover they secretly wanted to see me fail. It's a harsh reality, but here's the thing. If you don't learn to recognize the signs, you'll waste time and energy on people who don't truly understand or respect you. So let's cut through the pretense and talk about the subtle signs that someone dislikes you but is hiding it. You may not want to hear this, but it's far better to face the truth than to live in denial. 1. When they frequently joke about your flaws. We all know that person who loves to joke, but especially when the joke is on you, they'll pick at your quirks, your mistakes, and imperfections, often following it with a casual, "I'm just messing with you." At first it seems harmless, but let's not deceive ourselves. These jokes are often more than light-hearted fun. They are calculated digs disguised as humor, designed to chip away at your confidence bit by bit. I can recall a time when I was close to someone who always had something to say about me, whether it was how I dressed, how I spoke, or even the projects I was working on. At first I laughed it off, thinking it was all in good fun, but over time I noticed a pattern. The jokes were always aimed at my perceived weaknesses, never my strengths. This made me start second-guessing myself, wondering if I really was the problem, or if my so-called flaws were as glaring as they made them seem. Here's where things get tricky. People who consistently joke about your flaws aren't doing it out of affection. They're testing your boundaries to see how much disrespect you'll tolerate. This is a subtle form of manipulation, a way for them to assert dominance and keep you in a place where they feel superior. The worst part is that they often get away with it because we're conditioned to believe that if we can't take a joke, the problem lies with us. But let's turn that narrative around. You have every right to stand up for yourself when a joke crosses the line. In fact, it's necessary. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you up, not those who tear you down just for a cheap laugh. True friends don't need to highlight your flaws to feel better about themselves. Instead, they celebrate your strengths and help you work through your weaknesses without making you the punchline. I've seen many people let these kinds of jokes slide, thinking it's easier to avoid confrontation and keep the peace. But here's the hard truth. When you allow others to disrespect you, even under the guise of humor, it becomes a slippery slope. It starts with small, seemingly innocent comments, but over time those jabs can wear you down and make you question your worth. The more you tolerate it, the more they'll push until you're left doubting yourself, all because you didn't want to seem too sensitive. I learned this lesson the hard way. By laughing along, I was essentially giving them permission to continue disrespecting me. It wasn't until I started setting boundaries and standing up for myself that I saw a change, not only in how they treated me, but in how I viewed myself. I stopped letting their words define me and started taking control of my own story. So here's my advice. The next time someone makes a joke at your expense, don't just brush it off. Ask yourself, is this really funny, or is there something more going on here? And if you feel like there's a deeper issue at play, don't hesitate to call them out. It might feel uncomfortable and it could even cost you the friendship, but your self-respect is far more important than someone's misplaced sense of humor. Life is too short to surround yourself with people who don't see your value. If their version of friendship involves constantly pointing out your flaws, it's time to move on and find people who truly support and uplift you. The ones who care about you won't need to knock you down to feel good about themselves. So, stand tall, speak up, and don't let anyone reduce you to a punchline. 2. Compliments that feel more like insults. We've all experienced it. Someone gives you a compliment, but instead of feeling appreciated, You're left questioning yourself like you've been hit with a disguised insult. These comments seem positive on the surface, but they leave a bitter aftertaste, making you wonder, wait, was that really a compliment? Or did it have an underlying sting? The reality is that these are often backhanded compliments, an insidious blend of praise and criticism designed to undercut you while pretending to offer kindness. Backhanded compliments are a sneaky way for someone to undermine you without being openly confrontational. I remember once working on a big project that I was incredibly proud of. After pouring in countless hours of hard work, I finally shared it with a group of colleagues. One of them, whom I believed to be a supporter, said with a smile, "Wow, this is actually pretty good for someone like you." At first it seemed like a compliment, but those last words, "for someone like you," hit me like a brick. It made me stop in my tracks and wonder, what does that even mean? Am I not supposed to be capable of producing good work? That's the tricky part about backhanded compliments. They often contain a subtle dig, a veiled criticism that cuts at your confidence. They aren't meant to lift you up. Instead, they're intended to keep you in check, to maintain a power dynamic where the person offering the compliment feels superior. It's a manipulative tactic to make you doubt your own abilities. They're essentially saying, "I see you trying, but you'll never quite measure up." What's particularly insidious is that these backhanded compliments are often wrapped in such a pretty package that you might almost miss the insult hiding inside. They might sound like praise, but the hidden message is clear. You'll never be as good as me. This kind of behavior is toxic, but it's often overlooked because it's delivered under the guise of kindness. It's important to recognize that people who dish out these compliments are usually battling their own insecurities. They see your potential, your strengths, and it scares them. So they use these sly, undermining remarks to keep you second-guessing yourself. It's their way of making sure you don't rise too high or threaten their sense of superiority. It's like they're patting you on the back with one hand while pushing you down with the other. Here's the controversial part. We've all probably been guilty of giving a backhanded compliment at some point, even unintentionally. It might come from our own insecurities slipping out. But recognizing this pattern in others allows you to stop accepting it. You have the power to reject these disguised insults and see them for what they truly are. A reflection of someone else's insecurity, not a measure of your worth. When someone says something like, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is good considering you're new at this," you don't have to silently accept it. Don't hesitate to call it out, even if it makes things uncomfortable. For instance, you could respond with, "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" This forces the person to confront the true intent behind their words, putting them on the spot and making them rethink their behavior. Often they'll quickly backtrack or change their tune. The key takeaway is that you should never let anyone's veiled negativity define how you see yourself. Whether it's a so-called friend, a jealous colleague, or even a family member, their backhanded compliment is more about their own insecurities than it is about you. Compliments should build you up, not tear you down. If someone's words leave you doubting yourself, it's time to question their intentions, not your abilities. Life is too short to surround yourself with people who can't genuinely celebrate your successes. Choose to be around those who appreciate your value without trying to diminish it. True friends will never have to undercut you with their compliments. They'll uplift you without any hidden agenda. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the 7 signs that someone dislikes you and is hiding it. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel. 3. They subtly exclude you from plans. Sometimes the smallest actions hurt the most, like realizing that your so-called friends accidentally forgot to invite you to a gathering, a party, or even a weekend trip. They might brush it off, saying it was a last-minute plan, or worse, assume you were too busy to join. But let's be honest, these aren't innocent mistakes. This kind of exclusion is often intentional, a form of social rejection masked as an oversight. It's a clear, though unspoken sign that you're not as valued as you think you are. I've experienced this all too many times. One weekend I scrolled through my phone only to find pictures of friends at an event I would have loved to attend. The painful part? Not one person mentioned it to me beforehand. When I casually brought it up later, I was met with a slew of excuses. "Oh, we thought you were busy," or "it was a last-minute thing." But deep down, I knew the truth. If they really wanted me there, they would have made sure I knew about it. Here's where it gets more uncomfortable. This type of exclusion is rarely thoughtless. It's deliberate. Instead of confronting you directly, they silently hope you'll fade out of the group without causing a scene. It's passive-aggressive, and it's cowardly. But unfortunately, it's also common. People don't talk about it much because it's easier to ignore the signs and accept the excuses rather than face the painful truth that you're being edged out. But here's the critical part. If you keep accepting these weak excuses, you're essentially giving them permission to continue excluding you. You're allowing them to decide your place in their lives rather than taking control of your own role in those relationships. I learned this lesson the hard way. For a while, I stayed quiet, letting these so-called accidental exclusions slide, hoping that maybe next time I'd be included. Eventually, I realized that by staying silent, I was allowing myself to be treated like an afterthought. So I did something uncomfortable but necessary. I called them out. I'd say things like, "Hey, I saw you guys went out last weekend. Why didn't anyone invite me?" It wasn't easy, and it certainly made things awkward, but it forced them to confront their behavior. Some got defensive, others tried to make up for it, but the message was clear. I wasn't going to let them quietly push me out. Here's the deeper truth. If people genuinely want you in their lives, they'll make an effort to include you no matter how last-minute the plans are. And if they don't, then it's time to reassess the value of those relationships. You deserve to be around people who don't make you feel like you're constantly chasing after their approval or attention. True friends don't forget to invite you. They ensure you're there because they genuinely enjoy your company. So, if you find yourself being subtly excluded from plans, don't just brush it off. Confront it. Ask the hard questions and be prepared for the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear. At the end of the day, it's better to know where you stand than to be left wondering why you were left out again. And remember this, you're not a backup option, you're a priority. Surround yourself with people who treat you like one. 4. They're only busy when it comes to you. We've all heard it. "I'm so busy these days, sorry I can't hang out." It's the perfect excuse, right? After all, everyone's busy. But what happens when you start noticing a pattern? They're always available for others, posting pictures of their outings, catching up with mutual friends, but when it comes to you, they're suddenly swamped. Here's the uncomfortable truth. They're not too busy. They're just too busy for you. I found myself in this frustrating situation more times than I'd like to admit. I remember reaching out to a friend I used to be close with, trying to set up a time to catch up. Every time I made a suggestion, they had an excuse. "I'm working late. I've got too much on my plate." Or maybe next week. Meanwhile, I'd see them hanging out with other people, always finding time for everyone except me. It took me longer than I cared to admit to realize what was really going on. The message was clear. I wasn't a priority in their life anymore. Here's where it gets tricky. Society has conditioned us to accept busy as a valid reason to be sidelined. But let's be real. People make time for what, and more importantly, who they care about. If someone is constantly too busy when it comes to you, it's not about their schedule, it's about their priorities. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because it forces you to confront the uncomfortable reality that you may not be as important to them as they are to you. The cold, harsh truth is that busy is often a polite way of saying, I don't want to spend time with you. It's easier for them to blame their schedule than to admit they're choosing not to include you in their life. It's a passive-aggressive way of keeping you at arm's length without dealing with the confrontation that would come from telling you the truth. They want to keep you on the hook, just in case, but they aren't willing to actually invest in the relationship. I've been on both sides of this. There were times when I was the one making excuses because I didn't know how to tell someone that I had outgrown the friendship. But being on the receiving end of it taught me a valuable lesson. It's better to be honest, even if it's uncomfortable, than to string someone along with half-hearted excuses. When I finally confronted my friend about always being busy, it led to an awkward conversation, but it was also a necessary one. That conversation gave me the clarity I needed to move on and invest my time and energy into relationships where I was truly valued. Here's the deeper message. Your time and energy are precious. Don't waste them on people who can't be bothered to make time for you. If someone is constantly too busy for you, it's time to reassess the relationship. You deserve to be around people who are excited to see you, who make an effort to include you in their lives, not just when it's convenient for them, but because they genuinely enjoy your company. It's important to realize that people change, and so do relationships. Sometimes we hold on to people out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, even when they've clearly moved on. But there's strength in letting go and acknowledging that you deserve more than someone's leftover time. It's not about being needy or demanding. It's about valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who don't value you. 5. They avoid physical contact like the plague. Let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: physical contact, or more specifically, the deliberate avoidance of it. Physical contact isn't just a feature of romantic relationships. It's a fundamental part of all human interactions. It's how we connect, build trust, and show affection. So, what does it mean when someone goes out of their way to avoid even the most casual touch? The truth isn't always easy to face, but it's clear. They're sending a signal that they're uncomfortable around you. And that's something you need to pay attention to. I remember a time when I had a colleague who seemed to flinch every time I offered a handshake or gave a friendly pat on the back. At first, I shrugged it off, thinking I might be overreacting. But as time went on, I couldn't help but notice that they were perfectly fine with everyone else. They'd be warm and tactile with others, but when it came to me, it was like I had an invisible barrier around me. It didn't take long to realize that their avoidance of physical contact wasn't just a personality quirk. It was a deliberate effort to keep me at a distance. Here's where it gets more complicated. Physical contact is a natural and essential part of how we, as humans, interact. When someone consistently avoids it with you, they're communicating a lack of comfort or connection. Yes, some people aren't naturally touchy-feely, and that's totally fine. But when someone is comfortable hugging others or giving high fives, yet pulls away from you, it's a major red flag. Their body language is speaking loud and clear, even if their words aren't. And let's be honest, we've all been on both sides of this situation. Maybe there's been a time when you avoided a handshake or leaned back when someone got too close because you just weren't feeling it. Or maybe you've been on the other side, confused and hurt when someone stiffened or pulled away at your touch. It's uncomfortable and awkward, and more often than not, it's a sign that the relationship isn't as solid as you might have thought. But here's the deeper truth. Physical contact is about more than just the act of touching. It's a way to show trust, warmth, and empathy. When someone consistently avoids it with you, they're not just avoiding touch, they're avoiding closeness, vulnerability, and connection. They're keeping you at arm's length, both physically and emotionally, and that's often a sign of an underlying issue in the relationship. Over time, I've learned to pay close attention to these cues, even when it's tough to admit what they mean. There was a time when I tried to ignore the signs, convincing myself that someone's reluctance to touch was just part of who they were. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. It wasn't just about their personality, it was about me and our relationship. When I finally confronted the situation, it led to some tough conversations, and in some cases, the end of certain relationships. But facing the truth also freed me from the constant frustration of wondering why things felt off. So here's the real takeaway: don't ignore the signs. When someone avoids physical contact with you, it's more than just a personal preference. It's a statement about how comfortable they feel around you and how connected they are. If you notice this pattern, don't shy away from addressing it. It might lead to deeper understanding, or it might reveal that the relationship isn't as strong as you thought. Either way, it's better to confront the truth than to live in uncertainty. And remember, you deserve relationships where physical contact isn't avoided but happens naturally and comfortably, whether it's a hug, a handshake, or even just sitting close without feeling awkward. These small gestures build trust and connection. If someone consistently avoids them, it's a sign that something's not right. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions and, if necessary, make the tough decisions. Life's too short to surround yourself with people who keep you at a distance, both literally and figuratively. 6. They disappear when you need support. Let's face it, nothing exposes the real nature of a relationship quite like a crisis. When life gets tough, you quickly find out who your true friends are. So what does it say when someone vanishes just when you need them most? It's not just a sign of unreliability. It's a glaring indication that they're not as invested in you as you once thought. And when someone pulls a disappearing act during your darkest hours, it's more than just disappointing. It feels like a betrayal. I learned this lesson the hard way during one of the roughest periods of my life. I was dealing with a deeply personal issue that shook me to my core, and naturally, I turned to the people I considered close friends, expecting some level of support, even something as simple as a text or a quick phone call. But what did I get? Silence. The people I thought I could rely on suddenly had a laundry list of excuses. I'm swamped at work. Sorry, I'm really busy right now. Or, I'll check in with you later. Spoiler alert, they never did. Here's where things get real. People love to claim they'll always be there for you, but when life gets messy, many of them disappear. They're around for the fun, the celebrations, and the good times, but when things start falling apart, they're nowhere to be found. It's easier for them to ghost you than to confront your pain or discomfort. Why? Because deep down, they don't care enough to step into the uncomfortable space of your problems. And let's be brutally honest. True support isn't about showing up when it's convenient. It's about being there when it's hard, when it's awkward, and when it's the last thing you feel like doing. The people who vanish when you need them most aren't just being inconsiderate. They're revealing exactly where you stand in their life. Through their silence and absence, they're telling you, your problems aren't worth my time. I remember feeling absolutely crushed when I realized that the same people I'd stood by in the past, through their breakups, family dramas, and career struggles, couldn't be bothered to return the favor. It was a harsh wake-up call, but also a necessary one. It taught me an important lesson. Not everyone who seems close to you is truly in your corner. The reality is, some people will stick around only as long as it's easy for them. Here's the deeper truth. Support is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. It's easy to be around when everything is going well, but the real test of a relationship is how someone shows up when life gets difficult. If someone disappears the moment you need them, they're not just letting you down. They're showing you that they were never fully present in the first place. But don't let their absence make you bitter. Let it make you better. Use their disappearance as a filter to identify who truly deserves a place in your life. The people who check in, who make time, who show up even when it's inconvenient, those are the ones who genuinely care, and those are the relationships worth nurturing and protecting. In the end, life is too short to waste on fair-weather friends, those who stick around only when things are easy. Surround yourself with people who will stand by you in the storm, not just bask in the sunshine. Because when you find those rare individuals who remain by your side when everything falls apart, you found something precious, something worth holding on to. And as for those who disappear, let them go. They've already shown you their true colors. 7. They gossip about you behind your back. Gossip is like a slow-acting poison in relationships, spreading quickly and causing damage before you even realize it. It's never as innocent as people try to make it seem. When someone you consider a friend talks about you behind your back, they aren't just passing along a casual story. They're betraying your trust, damaging your reputation, and undermining the very relationship you thought you had. Let's be honest. If they're gossiping about you, it's a clear sign they don't truly respect you, no matter how friendly they might seem to your face. I've been the subject of gossip before, and it was one of the most gut-wrenching experiences of my life. I remember confiding in someone I believed was a close friend. I was going through a tough time and needed to vent, to share the heavy burden I was carrying. I trusted this person to keep my vulnerability safe, to respect the confidentiality of our conversation. But just a few days later, details of our private talk began to spread. Not only were my personal issues being discussed by others, but the story had been twisted, exaggerated, and distorted as it passed from one person to the next. It wasn't just a case of the message being misunderstood. It was being used against me. The person I thought I could trust had turned my pain into entertainment for others. Here's the controversial truth. People who gossip about you aren't just venting or sharing concerns. They're playing a manipulative power game. Gossip allows them to elevate themselves while diminishing you, all without confronting you directly. It's cowardly and toxic. By gossiping, they're not only eroding your reputation, but also chipping away at the trust that holds relationships together. And it's not just a one-time slip-up. Gossiping is often a pattern of behavior. One important thing to understand: people who gossip about others to you will almost certainly gossip about you to others. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. If someone loves to share the latest juicy tidbits about other people's lives, it's only a matter of time before they're sharing your secrets when you're not around. When you notice that the same person who loves to spill the tea suddenly goes quiet when they're with you, it's not because they've changed, it's because you've become their new topic when you're not there to defend yourself. Gossip is betrayal in its worst form because it happens behind closed doors, without giving you any chance to address or correct what's being said about you. I remember eventually confronting the friend who had betrayed my trust. I went into the conversation expecting an apology, or at the very least an explanation. Instead, they brushed it off as if it was no big deal, calling it harmless talk. But here's the thing: gossip is never harmless. It's an act of betrayal, plain and simple. And the fact that they didn't even see it as wrong told me everything I needed to know about them and our relationship. The deeper truth is that gossip says far more about the person spreading it than it ever does about the person being talked about. It reveals insecurity, a lack of integrity, and an unwillingness to handle relationships with honesty and respect. If someone gossips about you, they're showing that they don't value your trust or your relationship, and that they're willing to exploit your vulnerabilities for their own amusement or to gain social capital with others. In the end, gossip isn't just a betrayal of your confidence. It's a betrayal of the foundation of any meaningful relationship: trust. If you find out someone has been gossiping about you, don't ignore it. Confront the situation, and if necessary, walk away from the relationship. You deserve to be surrounded by people who will protect your privacy and respect your trust, not those who will use your struggles as fodder for their entertainment. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and hit the notification bell so you're always updated with our latest releases. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.